Well, to discuss this further, let's speak to Amin Saikal. He's a professor of Middle Eastern Studies at the Australian National University. He joins us from Canberra. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme. So what do you think we
My
can
pleasure.
glean from this messaging, this choreography so far by both sides?
Well, I think both sides are very much interested, and they also have a lot of stake, at work. Um, but it is going to be a real test for Secretary Blinken to be able to persuade the Israeli leadership to accept a 6 weeks pause in fighting and a withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza enclave, and also this pause leading to a permanent ceasefire. I mean, as your reporter pointed out, Prime Minister Netanyahu and many members of his cabinet, the war cabinet, have been very much determined that they on the decision to wipe out Hamas. If Hamas stays alive and a ceasefire is enacted, that will be interpreted by many right-wing members of the Israeli cabinet as a defeat for Israel. It will be very much similar to the 2006 Israeli defeat by Hezbollah in Lebanon. And that is going to be the sticking point. But one important strength that this time Secretary Blinken is taking with him, and that is that he's linking the humanitarian pause to Saudi recognition of the State of Israel. And of course, the Israelis have been very keen to gain this recognition. And now the Saudi leadership has made it very clear that there's going to be no recognition of the State of Israel until such time that there is a ceasefire and, of course, there is a two-state solution. And I think that is something that now strengthens Blinken's bargaining position when he puts the ceasefire proposal to the Israeli leaders.
Where do you think Israel stands right now on potentially reaching an agreement and a ceasefire and calling a halt to its military activity?
Well, they are in a lot more difficult position than they had anticipated. First of all, they didn't expect Hamas to prove to be so resilient as it has proved to be. The war has now continued for 4 months, and the Israeli leadership has said that probably this war will continue for for a much longer period. And at the same time, the carnage which this war is causing in Gaza is raising the international pressure on Israel, but more importantly, of course, is the Israeli hostages. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is under a lot of domestic pressure to reach some sort of accommodation in order to secure the release of these hostages. But at the same time, Prime Minister Netanyahu has to be very concerned about his own position, because I think once this war is over in one form or another, then I think the political knives will be out for him. And I think at the same time, he would like to really avoid going to jail on the charges of fraud and misconduct and so on.
And I suppose let's not forget that any kind of pause in fighting, which we've had before, let's face it, before Christmas, it could mean a break for civilians who've been dealing with so much.
Well, absolutely. I think if there's going to be a 6 weeks long pause, that will be extremely helpful to the civilians in Gaza. But at the same time, I would be very surprised if Hamas agrees that this pause will not lead to a more permanent ceasefire, because otherwise it would be really the end of Hamas. And that's not something that the Hamas leadership would want to really see in Gaza.
All right, Amin Saikal, Professor of Middle Eastern Studies, joining us there from Canberra. Thank you for your insight.
My pleasure.